Welcome to Financial Planning. This is Diana Block, your online instructor, and we're going into week 2 of our course, our 6-week course. And this week we're going to talk about savings and credit, an incredibly important topic when you're talking about planning. Is savings and our credit, particularly savings. Everything starts with savings because whatever it is that we're planning, whether we're planning for our children's college or we're planning for retirement or planning for a vacation, is going to require some savings. And then in order for us to carry those plans out, we're going to have savings for the event we're saving for, and also savings for unexpected emergencies that are going to come along the way. If you're saving for a vacation and you're going to take this cruise next year and you're saving for that, believe that at some point between now and next year, some other issues are going to come up that are going to tempt you to distract yourself from that goal of going on that trip. And not that the trip is the most important thing ever, but if it's important to you and it's important enough for you to save for, you want to actually take the trip. And so that means you have to have twofold savings. You have to have savings for your trip, and then you also have to have some savings for general emergencies so that when an emergency comes up or something important happens along the way, you can take care of that and still continue to save for your trip or your retirement or your kids' college. So there's a lot to learn about savings. And this week in chapters 5, and we're going to study 5 through 7, but chapter 5 is the one that primarily talks about savings. And there's multiple ways that you can go about saving. A lot of people, I hope not so much anymore, but at one time people would just put cash into a pillowcase under their mattress, or a lot of people put cash in a jar. I know people who initially teach their children how to save by simply having a piggy bank and putting all your spare change into it at the end of the week. And then after so long, maybe at the end of the school year, you open that piggy bank and they realize they've got enough money to go buy something. So that's your introduction to saving. But it gets a little more complicated when we're an adult and we have serious things to save for. So chapter 5 talks about some methods of savings, some bank products that will allow you to save. And we're going to talk just briefly about some of those because you're going to read about it in the reading for the week anyway. But I want to point out some of the benefits of these different savings vehicles. So if you have a regular savings account at your bank, the benefit of that regular savings account is that you can get to it easily. If you happen to need the money for some reason, especially if it's your emergency fund that you're saving for and the emergency comes up, you need to be able to go to the bank and get that money. That's the benefit of a regular savings account. Generally, up to 4 times a week you can withdraw, 4 times a month you can withdraw from your regular savings account without any penalties. Now, of course, you don't want to go into it all the time because then that defeats the purpose of it being a savings account if you're going into it every week. But you could if you needed it for emergency. Though that's the benefit, is that you can access it right away, a regular savings account. Now, a money market account is going to have stiffer penalties and issues if you try to withdraw. It's not as accessible as a regular savings account, although you can get to it because generally it's just at your bank as well. But in exchange for more restrictions on withdrawing, you'll get a higher return. Your savings account is going to get very minimal returns, not a lot of interest being paid on savings account. You'll make a little more on a money market account. But again, you'll have to check with your institution to see if an emergency, how you go about getting those funds and whether there'll be a penalty for that. Now, with the CD, there's going to be a serious penalty if you withdraw those funds early and cash out your certificate of deposit. But the benefit is that you'll get a higher return than a regular savings account, and these are insured. The money market is an investment type that is not insured. It's just like investing in the stock market that's not insured. Money market, you get the higher return, but it's not insured. CDs, you get somewhat higher returns, and it's insured. In exchange for that, you have to leave the money there for the period of time that you purchase the CD. Now, with savings bonds is another way to save. I remember when I was a kid, my mom bought all of us, me and my brothers and my sister, savings bonds out of her paycheck directly. And so in each of our names, we would have these savings bonds, and we just held on to them until we were old enough to need the funds and cash them in. So that was an easy way for her to save on a regular basis directly out of her paycheck. Savings bonds don't pay a lot of interest. It takes a long time for them to build up to the face value that's shown on the bond, but they are tax-free. So particularly if you're saving for education for a child, and maybe a child that's just born, so you've got 18 years before they need to cash it in, it's going to be safe, and it's going to be a tax-free investment, and then when they turn 18 they can cash that in. So there's multiple options for saving and getting a little bit of return on your money, other than just leaving it in a jar at home and not getting any returns. So with a lot of people, though, we know about savings. We know the benefit of savings. It's not a hard sell. Everybody wants to save. The problem is a lot of us feel like we can't save because we don't have enough money. How am I going to save? I'm broke as it is, you know. I know I've been there. I've felt that way, and I know a lot of people who have, is that just finding enough money to save is the problem. And what we really have to do is evaluate how we're spending. A lot of people who need to save the most, people who are in challenging income situations, don't save because they feel like they don't have enough to save, but those are the people who need to save the most. There's an article in your textbook that quickly talks about some credit killers and savings killers, and I want to talk about those here because it's really important. It's really important, more important than just maybe the one page that it's given in the textbook. These that I have listed here, these items are the reason that a lot of low-income people aren't able to save, is because they're doing banking business with organizations like this. And the reason that these places exist is not to help low-income people or to extend credit to them. It takes advantage of them, really. And some of that is my personal opinion, but I've been in finance for a long time, and I've not seen anybody that was really able to get ahead by using services like this. So let me just explain what they are and why, if you're trying to save, these services really aren't helpful. So with pawn shops, most of us know what they are. They loan you they loan you money on a valuable item that you own already, and they charge very high rates for the loan, and you have to pay it back usually like in 30 or 45 days, and then you can get your item back. You pay the loan back plus interest. The thing that you have to be concerned about with using this as a way of getting emergency cash is that you're going to pay a lot more to get your item back than they loaned you. So it's very high interest rates. Secondly, they're not going to loan you very much on the value of the item. I have had a client who took an iPad to the pawn shop that because they needed emergency cash. And this is an iPad that was the new model, and it cost probably $700. It probably could have been sold on Craigslist for $300 if you just wanted to sell the item because I'm liquidating and I need cash. You probably could have gotten $300 if you had sold it on in a help wanted ad, or I'm sorry, a personal ad, not personal ad, but a sales ad. Or just looked around for someone in your circle who wants to buy an iPad. They could have probably gotten a lot more. The pawn shop gave them, I think, $75 for a $700 item. Keep in mind, if you don't claim it, they're going to sell it for probably $300 or $400. So my point being that if you just have to liquidate some things, find a buyer that'll give you a fair price for it rather than a pawn shop. So that's my spiel on that. Check cashing outlets charge unreasonably high fees, unbelievably high fees, and they are basically the same as a car title loan. They charge very high fees for the loans. The benefit is that they get you the money quickly without checking your credit. And I've had a lot of clients who have gotten involved with either check cashing outlets that give payday loans or car title places that give payday loans, type of loans, and the fees are so high that they never get from under the loan, or they've borrowed maybe $300 till payday and they ended up paying $700 or $800 back to finally get the loan paid off. And that's payday loans and car title loans. Check cashing outlets I have on this list just because you can find this service at a less expensive cost by getting an internet banking debit card. There's a lot of banks over the internet, legitimate banks, that have internet-only accounts. A lot of people I know can't get a bank account because they've got previous credit problems, and that's why they resort to check cashing outlets to cash their paychecks, and they charge a percentage of your pay to cash the check. And you can avoid that by signing up for a prepaid debit card that doesn't require a credit check and having your pay directly deposited onto that. Rent-to-own centers charge you weekly rent. Generally, it's weekly for items. So, for example, if a new TV costs $400, but you don't have the money and you don't have the credit to buy it on credit, so you go to the rent-to-own. And so they charge you, oh, you can get that for $25, but it's $25 a week for maybe 104 weeks for 2 years. So you're going to pay way more than the $400 that the TV actually costs. In reality, anything that's at a rent-to-own center, I mean, they're not life and death items. It's furniture and TVs. You can live without that, really, until you save up the $400 and just pay for it. And so the point that we make here is that if you're involved with any of these items, which a lot of people are, you know, because times have gotten hard and people have gotten involved in these things not understanding how detrimental they are. But if you're involved with any of these items or these services, that's where a lot of your money that you could be saving is going. It's going to in high pawn shop fees. It's going on car title loan fees and payday loan fees and even check cashing fees and rent-to-own fees. If someone is paying even 2 or 3 of these type of services on a monthly basis, they've probably got a couple of $100 that is going to these services that could be the money that they're saving. So when you're trying to get a savings plan together and you want to save some money and be able to have money for emergencies and be able to pay cash for things that you want like TVs or vacations, you've got to narrow down your monthly expenses. And when you're trying to cut monthly expenses, things like this just are not going to allow you to get ahead and be able to save. And I know that people that use these services, they don't necessarily want to. They feel like they have to because they're in a situation where they need funds or they need some credit that they can't get, and this is the only place that will work with them. But I challenge people to come up with some creative ways to really just do without what seems to be an emergency situation. What's the worst that will happen if you don't borrow this money from the pawn shop? And see if that's something you can live with. And I know sometimes it isn't. If you're needing food or gas, then sometimes you have to do what you must. But these are things that should be absolutely avoided if at all possible, so that at the end of the month you have money to go into your savings vehicle. And whether that we're talking about building up your personal savings account for emergencies, or we're talking about making an investment in a money market or CD to actually start growing your funds a little faster, or if we're talking about your savings bonds that you're holding for long-term investments like your kids' education or retirement. But if you have more funds available at the end of the month to save, you can put it into one of these vehicles, savings vehicles, and then you have savings for emergencies and for vacations and investments. So it is a challenge because every situation is unique. I want to encourage you to read or view all of the videos that go along with this assignment this week. We're going to talk about how to rebuild your credit and how to keep your credit, and a lot of good information about getting out of debt. This is a really good unit. And if you have any questions or you want to talk about it more, feel free to chat with me in the discussion or give me a call or send me an email. Have a great week.